Deep in the forests of Bohemia lies a house. Alright, I know I said exactly the same thing last time. This isn't the same house. Deep in the woods of Bohemia sits a house. Can houses sit? Well, they can lie, so I guess they can sit down too. This small cottage in the woods has seen better days. With ransacked rooms and wood strewn about everywhere, it's no wonder the previous residents of this house have left. Or did they? Their washing still hangs on the line since the day that they put it there. The small pond that resides outside of the house gives off a toxic odor. This is the mystery of Green Lake House. In today's video, we're investigating Green Lake House. I recommend going and watching my biggest mystery in Kingdom Come Deliverance video. In that video, we explored the case of the Lonely Hunter, and as we go through this, I think it may end up tying in. This mysterious house in the middle of nowhere hides something that no one should see. Located to the southeast of Ratai lies Green Lake House. This is a small, dilapidated cottage in the middle of the woods. Taking a look around the property, we find what looks like a makeshift garden, using the dead trees as its boundaries. A little bit to the right of that, we find washing still hanging on the line. What could this possibly mean? Did the people who lived here leave suddenly? Outside of the small cottage is what looks like a small fire pit. I can imagine the family coming out on a warm summer evening and just sitting next to the fire, looking out over the forest. This area is stunning. The thing that caught my eye most though is this. This lake is a putrid green. Now, I've not seen any other water like this in Kingdom Come Deliverance, so why is it like this? Well, I'm going to try and maybe explain that later on. Also outside of the house we find a pile of wood. I'm assuming that the owners of the house were cutting down wood for their fire, and maybe they used this bucket to transport sticks and stuff like that. Stepping inside the house though gives us quite a somber scene. This place is in absolute ruin. Now, my initial thought here was that maybe a tree had landed on the roof. As you guys can see there is a massive dent. And as you can see here, this wood is bent, so I'm guessing something with heavy force landed on top of this roof. Now, there is a dead tree lying here, so maybe this fell onto the roof and then rolled back down somehow, but that doesn't really make any sense. There are full-on shards of wood sticking out of the house and its windows, including barrels and everything else. It almost looks like this place was completely ransacked by someone. Did this take place after the residents had left? But it begs the question, why didn't the people take their items? Inside the house lies a single hard-locked chest. Opening this up may give us some information on who exactly lived here. Now, this stuff isn't exactly cheap. You've got decorating riding boots here, which alone are worth 647 groschen. Now, someone who was possibly noble would have worn these. Either that or a very well-paid knight. Inside is a lucky playing die as well, so obviously the family enjoyed their farkle. As well as that is the falchion, which is a hunting sword, and that's worth 405 groschen. But possibly the most telling item that lies in here are these. These are knight spurs. 554 groschen is what they're worth. These are items that you wouldn't leave behind, but it also gives us an insight to who lived here. But before I try and tell the story of Green Lake House, we need to travel east. And we return here to the Lonely Hunter's Lodge. Since that last video, I had a few comments telling me of places that I should investigate. And inside the house, we missed something quite ominous. Inside this bag are quite a few items that piqued my interest. Firstly is a bandit's ear. Now you normally find these for the quest for Captain Bernard in Ratai. Was the Lonely Hunter possibly a good person hunting down bandits at one point? And maybe their bloodlust became too much and they had to find other sources. The dagger would definitely come in very useful for this task. Also, did they possibly own a dog, and did it die of its own accord, or was this the Lonely Hunter's first victim? But possibly the most terrifying piece of this is the preserver that's found inside this sack. This keeps food fresh. And yes, while a hunter would definitely find a use for this, seeing as they didn't have refrigerators in 1403, unfortunately though in these circumstances that preserver takes on a whole different form. Was he using this on bodies? Covering them in preserver and then wrapping them up like we have here. But possibly the most harrowing thing that I noticed was outside. Buried in a pile of rubble and mud lies a skeleton, or maybe even multiple skeletons. A hand sticks out and we can see what either looks like the top of a skull or possibly a hip bone. I'm assuming that these are possibly the Lonely Hunter's first victims. And it really does beg the question, how long have they been doing this? So without further ado, here is the story of Green Lake House. Retired knight and noble, Archibald moved into this small cottage with his wife Margaret. This was an escape from a life of greed and war. Archibald and Margaret would sit out here of an evening in front of the warm fire, reliving old memories and happy days. In the day, Margaret would tend to her garden. It was makeshift, yes, but Margaret really enjoyed it. It was her pride and joy. While Margaret tended to her garden, Archibald was working on a shed, a small building that he could put his tools in. This place wasn't only an escape, it was somewhere where they could be at peace, somewhere where they could be happy. And they were no happier than the day that Margaret told Archibald that she was pregnant. Archibald stored everything of worth in this chest. He was going to make sure his child had the best possible life. But unfortunately, the story of Green Lake House doesn't have a happy ending. And little did they know that life would come crumbling down around them. One day when Archibald was gathering wood, someone came up behind him. His years of training had not prepared him for this. All he heard was the blade draw and everything went black. Unfortunately, Margaret was none the wiser to this. Grabbing her from behind and gagging her, they dragged her into the woods. Margaret screamed as loud as possible, but unfortunately no one could hear her. The gag around her mouth was stopping any sound from coming out. She pulled and pulled, but unfortunately the Lonely Hunter was just too strong. Throwing her onto this table, the Lonely Hunter did horrendous things. Margaret didn't live long. Standing looking out over the forest, the Lonely Hunter thought about what they'd done. These were their first victims. Riddled with guilt and anguish, the Lonely Hunter picked up Margaret's body and buried it here, where we can still see the remains to this day. A few days later, the Lonely Hunter travelled back to the house. Covering up any tracks that they may have left, they pushed Archibald's body into this pond, and he sank to the bottom, where he remains to this day. Before leaving, the Lonely Hunter came into the house and ransacked the entire room. What he was looking for, we'll never know. Green Lake House is a tale of love life lost, and is a tale that somewhat reminds us that we can never escape our past. And that is the end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much to Gegs for sending me these locations, and also to you for watching them. The support we had on the last video was absolutely amazing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, but until next time, sleep tight.